Excuse me. This place, is it new?
I think maybe, I don't know.
There was a motel on this spot, though, right? The Haven Air?
I don't know.
Fucking guy.
Hi, my name is Miranda. I know you don't know who I am, but I wore these pants and I'm willing to dance like an idiot if you just... My parents were both born in Puerto Rico. I grew up in a household where half my family learned English as a second language. The code switching that happens when your parents speak Spanish at home and you speak English at school, it happened for me really young. I went from just being Lin-Manuel all the time to Lin at school and Lin-Manuel at home. I grew up 10 blocks from here. If you walk down that hill, you'll hit my house. My father worked in politics. My mother is a psychologist. I tell people I'm the laziest member of my family, and they never believe me until they meet my parents and they go, oh, yeah, you're kind of a slacker. I have never known either of my parents to have just one job. They always had many jobs at once, and they worked really hard so that we could have the things we wanted. I also grew up in a house where they were not around. It was sort of every person for themselves.
Dear family, hi, remember me? I'm the kid you ditched in the woods for a month.
I had, like, for real forests across the street, and I lived in my own imagination.
Here's a picture to remind you of me, and it's you jumping off a building.
That was my whole world, and I created universes in my head. I always saw the subway map. There's like a little Pac-Man shaped arrow in the corner of every subway map. I would imagine the Pac-Man eating up all the subway stops and like the transfer stops with power pellets. Yeah. Like this was like a thing I spent many hours doing in my head as a kid, going from, West 4th Street where I went to nursery school all the way up to 200th Street where I got off. We grew up on 200th Street, so we spoke Spanish in every business we walked into. And so we always were speaking Spanish and English and the gift of also being sent to Puerto Rico. So you can't speak English with your parents. Your grandparents don't speak English. So it's sink or swim and make yourself understood. My grandfather worked as a manager of a bank, and he used to borrow the surveillance VHS camera so that I could make movies there. So I was really left to my own devices. I mean, they would leave me alone in the house, and I would watch TV, and I'd make movies, and I'd draw. They'd come home, feed me lunch, go back to work, and then they'd come home at the end of the day. I just had inordinate amounts of alone time. I think that's the best incubation for a writer you could have, is just lots of time becoming your own best friend. I was the kid who carried the camcorder to school. While everyone else was actually getting to know each other, I held everyone at a remove and recorded the whole thing. As my Twitter followers will know, because you will see hours of VHS videos and movies that I made growing up.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda reviewing Pushcart War by Teen Merrill.
I digitized all of it. There's hours. I was like a Spielberg in my own mind. When you feel like you are an outsider, you go, well, let me show you where I'm from. I bring dope Latin music and I bring dope food, and it became an opportunity to bring my culture to school instead of a negative thing like, oh no, there's no Latinos. It's like, oh no, I'm gonna bring what being Puerto Rican is. Music was my way back into my language. First song I wrote, I sang a cappella into my Fisher-Price tape recorder. It was called The Garbage Pail Kids Are in Town. And it was about all the different Garbage Pail Kids, because I collected Garbage Pail Kids cards. And they were coming to town. I grew up one neighborhood over from hip-hop as it was being born. It's always been the most exciting storytelling genre to me, full stop. My sister took me to Beat Street when I was a little kid, and I remember going to see Disorderlies because the Fat Boys got... So like, there was just never a time when hip-hop wasn't a part of my life. So we had a really weird mix of Latin music and cast albums. I was a cast album guy. My mom used to blast Man of La Mancha and Camelot. Broadway was a very special occasion, but we'd go every few years or so. And every time we went, it was like the world opened up a little bit. Les Mis was the first one I ever saw. I just remember the effect it had on my parents, actually. They brought home that cast album, and every time they played Bring Him Home, my mom would start crying. I saw how much musical theater moved my parents. I wanted to move people like that. And then Phantom was the second musical I saw, and it was about like an ugly songwriter who like wants to get girls to notice him. Yeah. And I was like, I know all about that. I'm on the cusp of puberty. I really learned musicals by like being in shows, being in Pirates of Penzance and Godspell and stuff.
Let them hate me, hit me, hurt me, nail me, treachery.
Theater kids are often people who feel isolated in the hierarchy of high school. What theater did for me was give me the zoom out that you sometimes need.
I was a angsty, morbid teenager. I had a poster of Brandon Lee and The Crow on my wall.
That's how I experienced much of high school, but if you're doing theater, one, you're all making something because you want to make it. Like, none of us are getting a grade for this. And two, you make friends in other grades. Chris Hayes from MSNBC was a year above me at my high school. He directed my first musical. And if things were getting too real in my grade, I'd go hang out with Chris Hayes. Lynn, hi.
Yeah.
And just like, the problems in our grade aren't really a big deal. My great uncle was a beloved and celebrated theater actor in Puerto Rico, on the island where he grew up. And so in a lot of ways, I am my father's wildest dreams. I think In the Heights was the first time I brought the stuff I was learning in theater, and it was the music I grew up with, the neighborhood I grew up in, and like all the stuff that mattered to me. January 16th, 1997, for my 17th birthday. My girlfriend Meredith has surprised me with tickets to see Rent, and it totally rocked my world. There's a moment in the second act where Mark and Roger are having this heated moment.
Yes, you live a lie. Tell you why. You're always preaching not to be numb. When that's how you thrive, you pretend to create
and observe when you really detach from feeling alive. And that's when Jonathan Larson reached out and punched me straight in the heart. It felt like he was talking to me. I was like, oh, you're allowed to write about what you know in a musical? Musicals always took place in some other time, in some other land. If I did see a musical set in New York, it was always a period piece. It was all white folks up on stage, and here comes Rent, and you're allowed to write about the East Village now and artists struggling whether to eat or pay their rent. I related to that immensely because I knew I was going into the arts and I knew I was going to be broke for a really long time. For the first time, I understood that theater could be a vessel for my heart and my fears and my community's stories. I had permission to start writing about the things I knew. I didn't have to write about a phantom in an opera house or cats. The whole thing was written by a talented young composer named Jonathan Larson. This guy is writing from a very personal place. It's about New York. It's about his artistic community and like wrestling with the same things that I'm wrestling with. Like, I'm scared to die. I'm scared of like making art and nobody noticing. The things that Jonathan did with Rent are all things I believed in. I believe musical theater should be in communication with pop music and popular culture. I believe in bringing the kinds of music you love to musical theater. I wrote my first musical that year. It was called Nightmare and Teenager. My early attempts at writing musicals were all Larson knockoffs. I was trying to sound like him, you know, like they're vaguely pop rocky and they all just sound like Jonathan Larson D-sides. Nightmare in D Major is terrible. It concerns our young protagonist who falls asleep and has a nightmare. No. And all of these Freudian concerns come to haunt him. No. Chiefly among them, the main villain of the piece is a fetal pig he dissected in AP Bio who is back for revenge. It's a pretty short line from seeing Rent at 17 to starting to write In the Heights at 19. One of the first songs I wrote for the show, I started singing to myself in Washington Heights. I couldn't see a way for me to have a career in musical theater based on the musicals that already existed. In the Heights was born out of the ashes of no one's gonna write your dream thing for you, you've gotta make it. In the Heights was my way of writing a Latino storyline in which we never played gang members once. When I was 21 years old, I see the off-Broadway production of Tick, Tick, Boom, and it was like a sneak preview of my 20s. Jonathan Larson wrote this show about how hard it was to put on musicals in New York. It's an artist in the process of finding their voice, mourning the loss of their 20s because Jonathan spent his 20s writing a musical no one wanted to produce. And he took that heartbreak and that disappointment and made art out of even that. Here's how hard it is. Here's how joyous it is. Here's what you're in for, kid, said Jonathan Larson to me. And what is so thrilling about Tick, Tick, Boom is that it's a self-portrait of an artist as a young man. Jonathan Larson, whose work got me writing musicals in the first place, seemed to ask me in the text of this show, would you spend your time doing what you love, even if all you face is rejection and tomorrow's not promised? My answer in the Jane Street Theater that night was yes. God help me, yes. And the fact that rent is on the horizon for him, I find endlessly inspiring because it says, maybe my best work is ahead of me, and maybe the heartbreaks and disappointments are valuable in some other form. And it was somehow even more concentrated and personal an attack than Rent was. I realize he did hear a ticking clock. He died of a sudden aortic dissection the night before Rent's first public performance off Broadway, a complication from an Marfan syndrome. He was 35 years old, about 2 weeks shy of his 36th birthday.
Jonathan Larson's story is at least partly about having to wait for your genius to be recognized. That's not something you really had to do, though, is it?
Well, you speak of genius as if it's this static thing, but I wasn't any good at writing musicals in my 20s. I wrote 6 musicals called In the Heights. The last one is the one that made it to Broadway. The one that I wrote in college would have been laughed out of the room. I'm 20 years old, finishing my sophomore year at Wesleyan, and my girlfriend of 4.5 years is home from her semester abroad. I've grown into my life without her. In her absence, I have developed the first draft of my first full-length musical, an 80-minute one-act called In the Heights. I dread seeing her again. I've also developed a blinding pain in my right shoulder. My mother takes me to a back specialist. He examines me and says, "There's nothing wrong with your back. Is there anything in your life that's causing you stress?" I burst into tears in his office. He looks me in the eyes and tells me, "You're trying to avoid going through pain. You'll have to survive it if you want to be any kind of artist." I break up with my girlfriend that night. I graduated from Wesleyan University in Connecticut in May 2002 with a degree in theater. To pay rent, I go on to teach 7th grade English at Hunter, then scale back after the first year to substitute teaching. And they offered me to stay on. And I saw the Mr. Holland's Opus version of my life stretching out before me, and I ran away. Because I just knew I'd always be kicking myself if I hadn't tried to make the musical theater road happen.
In 4 years, we should have enough for you to quit. Do nothing but compose music and become famous and make us rich.
Never make it.
So I take other odd jobs. I move furniture. I dance and bar and bat mitzvahs. I don't have dental insurance, so I volunteer at a dental school downtown so I can get dental work at a discount. You push through it, because what's the alternative? You're gonna leave that idea stuck in your head forever? That sucks. You have to live with the notion of, if I die, this idea dies with me. It's just gonna be you banging your head against the wall of your childhood dream, and the world is gonna tell you no every day of your life. With Heights, it was much more life or death. I was just writing the show that I hoped would give me a foot in the door of theater.
When have you felt the most present on stage?
It's always freestyle. But I freestyle with my friends, and we would just do shows to make odds and ends. And we started doing this in like 2003. We were working on In the Heights. Chris Jackson and I were in the basement of the drama bookshop. He was playing Benny and I was playing with Snappy. And Anthony, who worked at the bookshop, would come in and distract us. He would be like, "Let's rap about our day." We would just like freestyle it. Anthony was like, "We should do this in front of people." Yeah, on the floor. Oh, this was 2004. We're going on stage, we're getting a verb.
Yes.
And we're going to do a show. And we'll just proceed from there. Like, for me, it's the opposing muscle group of my writing, because I can never buy into the notion of writer's block. Like, I did a 90-minute show with my friends last week.
Had a taste of your Vegemite. Yellow bottle, I thought it would be hella tight. Oh my gosh, then it happened. I vomited so hard it threw up like a comet. How do you eat it?
Excellent, good. How about another word?
From 2002 to now, it's been
series of readings and workshops and going to the O'Neill and being in the basement of the drama bookshop and sort of never knowing what's next, but always just trying to make the show better.
You know, it took you 6 years to write In the Heights. What keeps you going?
The idea itself keeps me going. You get to a point where it feels worse not to finish it than it does to finish it. I have to be comfortable with isolation and I have to be comfortable with collaboration because they're both necessary to my work. I was very lucky and an early ally with Tommy Kail with that. We met in the basement of the drama bookshop.
I invited him to come and talk about In the Heights. This was in May of 2002. It was the only thing I was thinking about for the previous 2 years because I'd gotten a copy of the score and the script from my pals who had seen it. And so I had 2 years worth of information in my head, and he thought we were coming to have a cup of coffee, and I just didn't stop talking. And we ended up talking for 5 or 6 hours.
If there were a time lapse of the room, everyone else just kind of peels away, and we are still talking about In the Heights. He had all these ideas about the show, and they were all really good ideas. That came to its ultimate fruition when Chiara came on board to write the libretto because she was writing about her neighborhood in Northern Philly with the same love and attention that I was writing about my neighborhood in Northern Manhattan. I wanted it to sound like if you were walking down 10 blocks in Washington Heights. You're gonna hear salsa music, you're gonna hear hip hop music, you're gonna hear bachata and merengue. And I wanted it to feel like that and yet tell the story the way my favorite musicals do. I'm 23 years old, and Tommy Kail and I are meeting with a veteran theater producer. Tommy is directing In the Heights. With his genius brain in my corner, my 80-minute one act is now 2 acts. This big deal theater producer has seen a reading we put on in the basement of the drama bookshop in Midtown Manhattan, and he is giving us his thoughts. We are discussing the character of Nina Rosario, home from her first year at Stanford, the first in her family to go to college. The big deal theater producer says, "Now, I know in your version, Nina's coming home with a secret from her parents. She's lost her scholarship. The song is great, the actress is great. What I'm bumping up against, fellas, is that this doesn't feel high stakes enough. Scholarship, big deal. What if she's pregnant? What if her boyfriend at school hit her? What if she got caught with drugs? It doesn't have to be any of those things. You're the writer. But do you see what I'm getting at, guys? A way to ramp up the stakes of your story?" Tommy looks at me. "That's not the story you want to tell, and it's not the show I want to direct. There are ways to raise the stakes that are not that. If I could get in a time machine and watch any point in my life, it would be this moment. The moment where Tommy Kail looked at uncertain, frazzled me, desperate for a production and a life in this business, and said no for us. I keep subbing. We keep working on In the Heights for 5 years. Nothing was really happening on the show at all. We had done these presentations, but nothing happened. Like, it was just sort of like, okay, I guess we'll keep writing it until people are interested enough to try to put this on. Anytime you're going to put something new into the world, there's a million people who will tell you how they've done it better before, or how that's already been done, or how it's not going to work. And you have to look at those as motivators. Hi, my name is Lin-Manuel. I know you don't know who I am, but I wore these pants and I'm willing to dance like an idiot if you just give me the chance. Just plug my show and reach the people. Bust my flow, cause the flow is lethal. It's called In the Heights and life is sweet, yo. It helps that I get to kiss Karen Olivo. Woo! 8 times a week, yo. The beat's going, but we keep going cause we know we moving, improving the micro-reader. We can have a hit show about Latino people who wake up at my bodega. This orange is a Kenny Ortega. You better tell Zac Efron that he gotta get off because he's never gonna look like Jonathan Groff. Woo! Damn, he's so cute. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's true. Don't look in his eyes, you'll be taken in. You'll be breaking in, a spring awakening. That High School Musical's raking it in. It was paper thin, but they made it again. I'm facing the end of this song the hard way. This is what it takes just to make it a Broadway. I started writing In the Heights when I was 19 years old. I just turned 28 a few months ago. So I've spent 8 years writing the show, and I also play Usnavi, the bodega owner, at the heart of the story. In the Heights was just my big old what's missing, what haven't I seen that I know is true in the world. You want your stage to reflect your world. It looks like the subway I take every day. It looks like the street I walk down. I wrote about the side of my neighborhood that I never saw represented in media. I saw us on the 11 o'clock news when something bad happened in my neighborhood, but I didn't see the other side. And that was something I felt when I saw Rent at 17. I just felt, oh my God, this show set in New York actually looks like the New York I live in. In the Heights is basically 3 days in the life of this block in Washington Heights, New York, on the brink of transition. It's getting more expensive. Rents are going up everywhere, and we see these 3 businesses, and we meet about 12 characters and how they, experience this change. And I play Usnavi, who's the bodega owner, so all the stories sort of pass through his store. Everyone gets their coffee, their newspaper, their donuts, their lotto ticket from Usnavi. And so through him, we get to meet the whole neighborhood. Lights up on Washington Heights up at the dawning. I'll wipe down the awning. Hey, y'all, good morning.
In the Heights, a new Broadway musical.
I had no idea what the reception of the show would be. There's just no way of predicting that. And I have seen masterpieces ignored in their time. And I have seen mediocrities vaulted to legendary status that I don't particularly think are very good. But people love them.
It's exactly what we need. It's bringing Broadway into this century, into this millennium, and that's what we've been needing for a while.
This shows. I mean, you can't deny that it's fantastic.
We get 80-year-old grandmas who say, "I hate rap music, but I love this," and we get kids who just are like, "This is real." I don't ever want to forget this moment as long as I live. Well, I've been working on this show my entire young adult life. And so tonight, I feel a real sense of accomplishment.
And the Tony Award for Best Score, In the Heights. Music and lyrics by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I used to dream about this moment, now I'm in it. Tell the conductor to hold the baton a minute. Mom, Dad, and Sita, I wrote a play. Y'all came to every play. Thanks for being here today. Vanessa, who still leaves me breathless. Thanks for loving me when I was broke and making breakfast. And with that, I want to thank all my Latino people. This is for Abuelo Wiesing and Puerto Rico. Thank you. It surprises me that no one has put hip-hop and Latin music into a Broadway musical before me. I'm surprised that I beat everyone to the finish line because I think the potential for this music is unlimited.
Good evening. 7 years ago, a young man came to a poetry jam that Michelle and I held at the White House.
He took the mic and said that he was going to perform a song from something he was working on about the life of somebody who embodies hip-hop. America's first Treasury Secretary.
I confess, we all laughed, but who's laughing now?
How does a bastard orphan son of While I want to get as much done in the time I have on this earth as anybody else, I also am very zen about the fact that, there are going to be things I write that people love. There are going to be things I write that people hate. With Hamilton, I knew I was doing my best work. I knew I was doing everything I knew about musical theater. I don't know if anyone else is going to like it, but I like it. So you kind of have to satisfy that first, and then, the rest is out of your hands. You're good. Make it real. And what does a bad dog get? Most unusual. Here, did you smoke a joint? I wouldn't mind one myself. Esther! Asking Cody Goodshire for his money back? Well, let me tell you my story. It just might surprise you.